She woke up early that morning, as she always did, with the sun just peeking through the small curtains of her modest apartment. The streets outside were quiet, with only the faint sound of birds and a distant car passing by. She moved carefully around the room, not wanting to wake her elderly neighbor who lived in the apartment next door. She liked the calm of the early morning. It gave her a moment to think, to breathe, and to prepare herself for the day ahead. Her life was simple, and she liked it that way. She worked at a small community cafe in the heart of the town. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and strangers felt like friends after a short visit. The cafe wasn't fancy or luxurious. It had mismatched chairs, old wooden tables, and walls that were painted a soft, fading yellow. There was a small bookshelf in the corner filled with worn novels and magazines that people left behind. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the faint scent of pastries that were always baking in the kitchen. It was comforting, a little world of its own. She lived for moments like these when the cafe was quiet before the morning rush. She liked arranging the tables neatly, wiping the counters, and making sure everything was in its place. There was a certain satisfaction in order, a sense that she had done something meaningful even in the smallest ways. But the thing she loved most about the cafe wasn't the work. It was the piano. The piano was tucked away in a corner, slightly hidden from view, and it was old. Its wood was scratched and faded. Some of the keys were chipped, and a few didn't even make a proper sound anymore. People rarely paid attention to it. Sometimes children would press a few keys while their parents sipped coffee, but most adults didn't bother. To everyone else, it was just an old piece of furniture. But to her, it was a treasure. She had learned to play when she was very young. Her parents could not afford private lessons, but a kind neighbor had taught her in exchange for helping with chores. Music had always been a part of her life, a secret that gave her joy even when the world seemed heavy. She had never played in front of anyone at the cafe. It wasn't that she was shy, though she was naturally quiet. It was more about respect. She wanted the piano to remain a little sanctuary, a place where she could escape the chatter and the noise, even if it was just for a few minutes at a time. And she was content with that. Her life wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about small moments of peace, like the early morning light coming through her window, or the aroma of fresh coffee blending with the soft hum of the town waking up. As she left her apartment and walked to the cafe, the streets were slowly coming alive. Shopkeepers were opening their stores, street vendors were setting up their carts, and children were running to catch the school bus. She smiled at a few familiar faces, nodding politely, exchanging small words of kindness. It was a town where everyone knew everyone, and even though it could be small and ordinary, there was a sense of community that she cherished deeply. The cafe was already alive with a few early customers. Regulars who came every morning for their cup of coffee and a slice of pastry were chatting quietly among themselves. She greeted them with a warm smile, remembering their favorite orders without needing a list or a note. There was a comfort in this routine, a rhythm to her life that felt safe and reliable. Once the cafe was running smoothly, she allowed herself a few moments near the piano. She brushed off a light layer of dust, testing the keys softly with her fingers. Even though some keys were out of tune or unresponsive, she didn't mind. The piano had character, each imperfection telling a story. She pressed a few keys, letting the sound fill the corner. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful in its own way. She closed her eyes and let the music flow naturally, her fingers moving with a memory she had long cherished. She played softly, just a simple melody she had composed herself, not noticing that a few customers had turned to listen. Drawn by the gentle sound, her heart felt light as she played, a quiet happiness that she kept close to herself. Music had always been a companion, a friend in times when words were not enough. She remembered nights when she would sit by her small window at home, letting her fingers wander across an imaginary piano, imagining a world beyond her small town. The piano at the cafe allowed her to live in that imagined world, even if only for a little while each day. As the morning passed, the cafe became busier. Orders piled up, customers talked and laughed, and the quiet corners became alive with activity. She moved with grace, taking orders, serving coffee and pastries, and keeping the cafe tidy. She didn't mind the work. It gave her a sense of purpose. But every time she passed the piano, she felt a pull, a gentle reminder of the music she carried inside. She longed for a moment when she could sit and play again, even if it was only for a few minutes. It was just after noon when the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The door opened with a chime, and a man she had never seen before entered. He was well-dressed, clearly someone from outside their small town. His presence had a certain energy, one that drew attention without him needing to say a word. People stopped their conversations and glanced over, curious. He had a confident air, and his eyes swept the room as if he was assessing everything and everyone. She noticed him but continued her work, preparing a coffee order for a regular customer. He moved toward the corner where the piano was, his eyes landing on it with an expression that was almost amused. He leaned casually against a table nearby, watching as she moved through the cafe. Then, in a tone that carried across the room, he spoke to her directly. It wasn't rude, but it was playful in a way that suggested he expected a reaction. He said something about the piano, teasing her, suggesting that she should play it even though it was broken, and that it would be funny to see what she could do. The room fell silent for a moment. People looked at her, waiting to see how she would respond. A few stifled chuckles could be heard. It was clear that they assumed she would struggle or embarrass herself, that this was a moment of amusement for the cafe. She felt a flicker of hesitation, a tiny pang of fear, but it passed quickly. She looked at the piano, then back at the man, and a quiet determination settled over her. She would play. Not for him, not for the room, but for herself. The music inside her was not for judgment or laughter. It was something pure, something that belonged to her. She walked to the piano with calm, deliberate steps. The chairs scraped softly against the floor, and a few people leaned forward, curious. She sat down, her hands hovering above the keys. The man smirked, thinking this would be entertaining. She pressed a key. It rang out clearly, more perfectly than anyone had expected. There was a pause, a moment where everyone realized that this simple sound carried weight and emotion. She pressed another key, then another, each note blending with the next. Her fingers moved with a grace and confidence that could only come from years of quiet dedication. The melody was soft at first, tentative, but it grew naturally, effortlessly. People in the room leaned closer, drawn into the music. The atmosphere shifted. Laughter and amusement faded, replaced by attention, surprise, and a quiet wonder. As she played, her mind wandered to memories of her childhood, of nights spent imagining faraway places, of the joy she felt when she first learned to make the piano sing. The music was more than sound. It was a story, a conversation with the world, a language she had carried all her life. She lost herself in it, unaware of the gazes upon her, unaware of the whispers that began to ripple through the cafe. This was her moment, a small but profound expression of who she was and what she loved. By the time she stopped, the room was silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone was holding their breath. Then slowly applause began, soft at first, then growing louder. The man who had teased her looked genuinely surprised, perhaps even humbled. The customers smiled, some with tears in their eyes, all clearly moved by what they had just witnessed. She rose from the piano, a gentle smile on her face, and returned to her work. She didn't speak of what had just happened. The music had said it all. It had told her story, and the room had listened. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of coffee orders and polite chatter. But there was a new energy in the cafe. People spoke quietly about the piano, about the woman who had played it with such skill and emotion. She continued her work, serving customers with her usual kindness, but inside there was a warmth she had not felt before. She had shared a piece of herself, and it had touched others in a way she had never expected. The music had a way of doing that, of breaking barriers without words, of creating a connection that was immediate and profound. As the day drew to a close, she tidied up the cafe, put the chairs in place, and gave the piano one last gentle touch before leaving. The keys felt familiar under her fingers, worn yet inviting, imperfect yet full of life. She stepped outside into the evening air, feeling the gentle breeze on her face. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the town. She walked home slowly, savoring the quiet, carrying with her the small triumph of a day that had started so ordinary and ended with something extraordinary. Music had once again reminded her of its power, and she felt grateful, humble, and quietly joyful. The next morning, she woke up to the same quiet streets and soft sunlight streaming through her window. Her body moved out of habit, Performing her morning routine with calm precision, she made herself a small breakfast, simple and warm, and then stepped outside to walk to the cafe. There was a sense of anticipation in her heart, though she could not name why. Perhaps it was just a normal human instinct, a subtle feeling that something different might happen today. As she approached the cafe, she noticed a few new faces outside, looking curiously at the building. The cafe had become more talked about after yesterday's small surprise, though she had tried to ignore the attention. Some of the regulars greeted her warmly, mentioning how they had spoken to friends about the music from the piano. She nodded politely, keeping her focus on opening the cafe and preparing for the day. She didn't want the excitement to distract her from her work. Once inside, she began her usual routine of arranging tables, wiping counters, and checking the pastries. The morning was calm, filled with the familiar rhythm of coffee machines and the soft chatter of early visitors. It was comforting, a gentle anchor to the day. Then, just as she was preparing a fresh pot of coffee, the door opened with a chime that made her glance up. The wealthy man from yesterday had returned. This time his presence was more noticeable, and there was a hint of anticipation in his eyes. He walked in with confidence, surveying the cafe as if expecting a scene to unfold. She felt a small pang of unease, remembering the teasing tone of his words from yesterday, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself that she was not here to impress anyone. She was here to do her work, to maintain her routine, and to live quietly in her world of small, meaningful tasks. Still, she noticed that he lingered near the piano, his expression one of curiosity mixed with amusement. There was something challenging in the way he looked at her, as if daring her to play. The cafe was gradually filling with people, many of whom had come specifically because of the music from the day before. She could feel their eyes occasionally turning toward her as she moved around, but she stayed focused on her tasks. She prepared drinks, served pastries, and offered smiles and small conversation to the regulars. Yet the piano, sitting quietly in the corner, kept calling to her, like a friend waiting to speak. After a while, the wealthy man spoke again, his voice carrying easily across the room. He made another playful comment about the piano, hinting that it was unlikely she could play anything meaningful on a broken instrument. The words were not cruel, but there was a teasing quality that made the atmosphere tense. The customers quieted, sensing the challenge, some whispering among themselves, unsure of what to expect. She paused in her work, considering his words. A small crowd had gathered by now, curiosity growing in the air like electricity. She felt a mixture of nervousness and quiet determination. This was not about proving him wrong or gaining attention. It was about expressing herself, letting the music she carried inside find its voice. She walked to the piano with steady steps, aware of the eyes on her but determined to remain calm. The man leaned casually nearby, waiting to see what she would do. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a brief moment, remembering the feel of the worn wood and the slightly uneven surface. She pressed a key and the note resonated clearly. The sound was unexpected to some, especially given the state of the piano. The wealthy man raised an eyebrow, intrigued and somewhat taken aback. She pressed another key, then another, slowly forming a simple melody. The music began quietly, almost tentatively, but it had a beauty that drew in everyone around. As she continued, she allowed herself to play more freely. The broken keys did not stop her. She adapted, finding ways to make the imperfections part of the melody. Her fingers moved with confidence and skill, as if they remembered every lesson, every quiet hour spent practicing as a child. The customers watched in silence, captivated by the unexpected harmony that emerged from the old piano. Some held their breath, unsure of how to respond, while others leaned in closer, drawn by the enchanting sound. The wealthy man's expression changed gradually. The smirk faded, replaced by something closer to awe. He had expected a moment of entertainment, a brief performance that would amuse the room. Instead, he was witnessing something genuine, something heartfelt and unpretentious. The music was not loud or flashy, but it was moving in a way that could not be ignored. Each note seemed to tell a story of patience, dedication, and quiet strength. A few children who had been playing in the corner stopped to listen, their eyes wide with wonder. Even the regulars who had seen her every day were surprised. They had always known she was kind and diligent, but they had never imagined such talent hidden behind her calm demeanor. The room was filled with a sense of reverence, the kind that comes when something unexpectedly beautiful captures the spirit of those present. She played a melody that was both simple and complex, weaving through highs and lows, creating a rhythm that felt natural and alive. She did not rush. She let each note speak for itself, letting the piano become an extension of her feelings. The broken keys added a character to the music, a texture that made it even more captivating. The audience could sense the love and effort behind every sound, the story of a woman who had nurtured her passion quietly for years. The wealthy man finally spoke, almost in disbelief. He asked her how long she had been playing, and when she answered quietly that she had learned as a child, he seemed genuinely impressed. There was a pause in his teasing demeanor, replaced by respect. The other customers exchanged looks, some nodding, some smiling, all clearly moved by the performance. The atmosphere in the cafe had shifted completely. What had started as a casual joke had transformed into a moment of genuine admiration and connection. After several minutes, she ended the piece softly, letting the final note linger in the air. Silence followed for a heartbeat, then applause broke out, growing louder as more people joined in. The wealthy man, who had been confident and playful moments before, clapped earnestly, his expression humbled. Some customers cheered quietly. Others wiped their eyes, all affected in their own ways by the unexpected display of talent. She rose from the piano with a gentle smile, her hands resting lightly on the keys. There was no arrogance in her movements, no desire to show off. The music had done the speaking for her. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of renewed attention and quiet excitement. People approached her with compliments, curiosity, and admiration. She listened politely, expressing gratitude without making a show of herself. She did not boast, nor did she seek recognition. The attention was unexpected, but she handled it with her usual calm and humility. Her focus remained on the work of the cafe, on preparing drinks, serving pastries, and keeping the environment welcoming for everyone. By midday, the cafe was filled with a mix of regulars and new visitors, all drawn by the story of the woman who had played the piano so beautifully despite its imperfections. She continued her work, aware of the growing interest but not letting it distract her from her routine. There was a quiet pride in her, a satisfaction that came from sharing a piece of herself with the world, even if she did so gently and without fanfare. As the afternoon approached, she found small moments to return to the piano, pressing a few notes quietly when the cafe was less busy. Each time she felt the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her fingers, the connection that had carried her through years of practice and silent devotion. The wealthy man lingered nearby, watching with a newfound respect. There was no teasing now, only an appreciation for the skill and emotion that she poured into the music. By the time the day drew to a close, the cafe had transformed in subtle ways. The atmosphere was lighter, more joyful, filled with a sense of wonder and possibility. People had come expecting a casual visit, a cup of coffee, a slice of pastry, but they had left with something more profound, a glimpse of talent, of dedication, and of the beauty that could emerge from humility and quiet effort. She closed the cafe for the day with a sense of contentment. The piano sat in its corner, still and inviting, a companion that had shared its voice with the room and left an impression on all who had listened. She stepped outside into the evening air, feeling the soft glow of the setting sun and the gentle breeze on her face. There was a sense of quiet triumph, not loud or boastful, but deeply satisfying. She had faced the challenge, shared her gift, and done so with grace and humility. As she walked home through the familiar streets, she reflected on the day. It had begun as an ordinary morning with the same routines, the same quiet streets, and the same gentle rhythm of life. Yet it had turned into something extraordinary, a moment where courage, talent, and humility combined to create an experience that would linger in the hearts of those present. She felt grateful, not for recognition or attention, but for the simple truth that she could express herself through music, and that the music could touch others in ways words often could not. Her life was still simple, still humble, but it had been touched by a small miracle. A piano, old and imperfect, had become a bridge between her world and the world around her. And as she walked toward her modest apartment, she felt a quiet joy, a feeling that even ordinary days could hold moments of extraordinary. The day started much like any other, with the sun casting a soft golden glow over the streets. She walked to the cafe with a quiet sense of purpose, carrying her usual small satchel and a gentle calm that seemed to follow her wherever she went. The cafe doors opened with their familiar chime, and she stepped inside, greeting the regulars with the warm smile that had become part of their mornings. Everything felt routine, yet there was a subtle undercurrent of excitement. Yesterday's performance had left a lingering buzz among the patrons, and even though she tried to ignore it, she felt it in the air. The piano sat quietly in the corner, worn and imperfect as if waiting for someone to wake it again. She approached it, her fingers lightly brushing the keys, testing them as she had countless times before. There was comfort in this motion, a quiet reassurance that she could always find herself in the music. Yet today there was something different. The cafe was filling with curious faces, new visitors who had heard of her talent through whispers and small conversations. The wealthy man from the previous day was also present, leaning casually nearby with a watchful expression. His amusement from yesterday had transformed into genuine curiosity, a silent challenge in his gaze. She felt a momentary flicker of nervousness, but it passed as quickly as it came. She reminded herself that this was not about proving anything to anyone. The piano was her sanctuary, and the music she was about to play belonged to her. Taking a deep breath, she sat down and placed her fingers lightly on the keys. The room quieted almost instinctively, a collective anticipation filling the space. Patrons exchanged glances, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Her fingers pressed the first key. The note rang out clear and pure, cutting through the murmurs of the cafe. There was a pause, a brief moment of silence as everyone processed the sound. It was unexpected. A single note that carried more emotion and presence than anyone had imagined possible from an old, imperfect instrument. The wealthy man leaned forward slightly, his eyebrows raised, the hint of a smile fading as awe replaced amusement. The room seemed to hold its breath, the simple sound drawing everyone's attention with a magnetic pull. She pressed another key, then another, each note blending seamlessly with the next. The melody was gentle at first, almost hesitant, yet it held a power that captured the room entirely. Patrons who had come to the cafe for ordinary conversations and coffee were now drawn into the music, their eyes following her hands as they moved across the keys. Even the children, who had been fidgeting in the corner, stopped and stared, mesmerized by the unexpected beauty that emanated from the piano. The wealthy man's expression shifted as the melody grew, moving from curiosity to genuine surprise. He had expected entertainment, a brief performance that would amuse and then fade. Instead, he was witnessing something real, heartfelt and profoundly moving. Her fingers danced across the keys, navigating the broken and imperfect notes with an ease that revealed years of quiet practice and dedication. The music was not just a display of skill, it was a reflection of her spirit, her emotions, and the patience she had cultivated through a lifetime of love for the art. The melody began to weave through highs and lows, soft whispers of sound rising into powerful expressions of emotion. Each note carried intention, a conversation with the audience that did not require words. She adapted to the piano's imperfections, letting the uneven keys and muted tones shape the rhythm in a way that felt natural and alive. The broken piano became a collaborator rather than a limitation, and the music resonated more deeply because of it. Around the cafe, people shifted closer, drawn by the magnetism of the performance. Conversations faded to whispers, and even the baristas paused for a moment, watching in quiet awe. The regulars, who had seen her countless times in ordinary moments, were astonished to discover a hidden depth and brilliance in someone they thought they knew. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a talent that had been patiently waiting to emerge. The wealthy man finally spoke, but his voice was no longer teasing. He asked how she had learned to play with such grace and emotion. She answered softly that it had been a part of her life since childhood, taught by a kind neighbor who had believed in her even when others could not. He nodded slowly, clearly impressed and a little humbled. The atmosphere had shifted entirely. The playful challenge had turned into genuine respect, and the room seemed to vibrate with a shared sense of wonder. She continued to play, allowing herself to be fully present in the moment. Her fingers moved with fluidity, guided by memory and intuition. She was not thinking about the audience or the wealthy man. She was thinking only about the music, letting it flow naturally from her heart through her hands. The broken keys did not hinder her. They added character, a unique voice that made the performance unforgettable. Every note seemed to tell a story of resilience, quiet dedication, and unspoken dreams. The children in the corner leaned closer, their eyes wide with curiosity. A few of the regulars had tears in their eyes, moved by the unexpected beauty. Even the newcomer visitors, who had come with no expectations, were captivated by the performance. There was a collective sense of awe, a recognition that they were witnessing something rare and profound. The cafe, once just a place for coffee and conversation, had become a stage for magic, a space where ordinary lives intersected with extraordinary talent. As she played, her mind wandered to memories of her childhood, nights spent imagining faraway places, moments when music had been her only companion and comfort. The piano at the cafe had become a bridge to those memories, a way to express feelings that words could not capture. She let each note speak, creating a tapestry of sound that was at once simple and complex, delicate and powerful. The imperfections of the instrument became part of the story, giving the music a texture that was unique and moving. The wealthy man watched intently, his earlier arrogance replaced by admiration. He had underestimated her, and now he understood that true talent could not be measured by appearances or circumstance. The audience was silent, absorbed in the performance, feeling the depth of emotion conveyed through each keystroke. The music had transformed the cafe into a place of shared experience, connecting everyone present in a way that transcended words. Finally, after several minutes of continuous melody, she brought the piece to a gentle close. The final note lingered in the air, resonating in the hearts of everyone present. There was a moment of silence, as if the room collectively held its breath, savoring the last vibrations of the piano. Then slowly, applause began, tentative at first, then growing louder as more people joined in. Cheers, claps, and murmurs of admiration filled the space, creating a wave of appreciation that washed over her. The wealthy man joined in the applause, his expression one of sincere respect. He approached her afterward, offering words of praise that were heartfelt and genuine. Other patrons came forward, sharing their amazement and gratitude for the music they had just experienced. She listened politely, her smile warm but modest. She did not seek the attention. She had shared her gift because it was a part of her, a language she had nurtured for years in silence. The rest of the day passed in a blur of conversation, admiration, and quiet pride. People returned to their routines, but there was a sense of magic lingering in the air. The piano had become more than an instrument. It had become a symbol of hidden talent, of the beauty that can emerge from humble beginnings and patient dedication. She continued her work at the cafe, serving coffee and pastries, her movements calm and unassuming, yet there was a subtle glow in her demeanor, a quiet joy that could not be hidden. As the afternoon drew to a close, she found small moments to return to the piano, pressing a few notes softly when the cafe was less busy. Each time she felt the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her fingers, a reminder of the connection between her past and present. The wealthy man lingered nearby, watching with a newfound respect. There was no teasing now, only appreciation, a recognition that she had shared something rare and beautiful with the world. By evening, the cafe had quieted again, and she tidied up with the usual care, arranging chairs and wiping counters. The piano sat silently in the corner, its worn keys holding the echoes of the day's music. She placed a gentle hand on the top as if thanking it for being her companion. Stepping outside, the streets were bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The air was warm, carrying the faint scents of pastries and evening flowers. She walked home slowly, reflecting on the extraordinary moments hidden within the ordinary day. Her life remained simple, but it had been touched by something remarkable. The first note she had played had changed the atmosphere, shifted perceptions, and revealed the depth of her talent. The music had spoken in a way words could not, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had heard it. She felt grateful, humble, and quietly joyful, knowing that she had shared a piece of herself and her passion with the world. It was a reminder that even the smallest actions, when done with dedication and heart, could create ripples of wonder and inspiration. The morning light spilled through the cafe windows, casting long shadows on the wooden floor. She walked inside as usual, greeting the regulars with her gentle smile, carrying a quiet energy that put everyone at ease. The day was calm at first, filled with the ordinary rhythm of coffee orders, pastries, and casual conversation. Yet there was a subtle sense of anticipation, as news of her previous performances had spread. Some visitors had come specifically to see the woman who could make a broken piano sound extraordinary. The atmosphere was charged, though she moved through it with her characteristic calm, never letting the buzz distract her from her tasks. The piano sat in the corner, worn and imperfect yet still holding an almost magical presence. Its wood was scratched, the keys uneven and chipped, some producing faint or unusual sounds. But it was her sanctuary, the place where she could express herself without words. She approached it, brushing her fingers lightly across the keys, feeling the familiar texture and weight beneath her hands. Patrons glanced curiously, some whispering about the upcoming performance, others simply watching in anticipation. Even the wealthy man from the previous day lingered near the piano, his expression a mixture of curiosity and respect. She had learned to manage the imperfections of the piano, turning its limitations into a unique voice. Today she intended to let her music flow freely, not worrying about the judgment of others. The moment she placed her hands on the keys, a hush fell over the cafe. People sensed that something special was about to unfold. The wealthy man, who had initially come with playful intentions, now watched intently, unsure of what to expect but clearly anticipating something remarkable. She pressed the first key, and the note resonated with unexpected clarity. It was the same effect as before, but this time the audience felt it more deeply. The sound carried a quiet strength, capturing the attention of everyone present. She moved to the next note, then the next, letting a gentle melody take shape. The music began softly, but there was a richness and depth that hinted at something more powerful beneath the surface. The audience leaned in instinctively, drawn to the subtle beauty that emanated from the old piano. Her fingers moved gracefully, finding harmony even in the keys that resisted. She navigated the broken notes effortlessly, allowing them to add character and texture to the melody. The music grew steadily, weaving through complex patterns and delicate sequences. Each note carried emotion, a reflection of years of dedication and quiet practice. Patrons were captivated, unable to look away. They sensed the story behind the performance, the dedication and passion that had brought this music to life. The wealthy man's expression transformed as he listened. The playful arrogance of yesterday had vanished, replaced by genuine amazement. He had assumed this would be a brief spectacle, a moment of amusement, but now he understood the depth of her talent. The audience, too, was mesmerized. Conversations ceased, phones were lowered, and even the background sounds of the cafe seemed to fade as the music took center stage. It was no longer just a performance. It was an experience, a shared moment that transcended ordinary expectations. The melody became more complex, intertwining highs and lows with a natural fluidity. Her hands moved with a rhythm that seemed both instinctive and deliberate, a perfect balance between control and emotion. She adapted to the piano's imperfections, using the uneven keys to create subtle variations in tone. Each note was intentional, contributing to a story that unfolded with every movement of her fingers. The audience felt the depth of her expression, understanding that this was not merely skill but a reflection of her heart and soul. Around the cafe, people were visibly moved. Some held their breath while others leaned forward, eyes wide with admiration. Children stopped fidgeting and watched in awe. Regulars who had known her for years were astonished, discovering a hidden brilliance they had never imagined. Even new visitors, drawn by rumors of her talent, were captivated. The music created a connection among everyone present, a shared recognition of beauty and dedication that transcended words. The wealthy man finally spoke, his voice low and sincere. He asked how she had developed such skill and emotion. She answered quietly, mentioning her early lessons and the hours spent practicing alone. His respect deepened, a clear acknowledgement that he had underestimated her. The audience murmured their agreement, recognizing the remarkable dedication and quiet perseverance that had led to this moment. She continued to play, letting the music fill the cafe completely. The broken piano became an extension of her expression, its imperfections adding character and depth. The melody was both delicate and powerful, simple yet profoundly moving. Patrons were transported, feeling the emotion conveyed through each note. It was a testament to the power of passion, perseverance, and the ability to find beauty even in imperfection. The atmosphere in the cafe had shifted completely. What had started as a playful challenge had become a display of genuine artistry. People were no longer there just for coffee or conversation. They were witnesses to something extraordinary. The music had a way of speaking directly to the heart, bypassing the mind and creating an immediate emotional connection. Each note resonated with meaning, telling a story that everyone could feel but few could articulate. The wealthy man watched closely, absorbing every detail. He had come with the expectation of amusement, yet he was now humbled by her talent. He realized that appearances could be deceiving, that true skill and dedication often resided where it was least expected. The audience, too, was captivated, their attention fully captured by the performance. It was a moment of revelation, a reminder that greatness could emerge from humility and quiet perseverance. As she brought the piece to a close, the final notes lingered in the air, carrying the weight of the emotion that had been expressed. There was a brief silence as if the room collectively held its breath, savoring the last vibrations of the piano. Then slowly, applause erupted. It began softly, then grew louder, filling the cafe with a wave of admiration and respect. Patrons cheered, clapped, and whispered their amazement, acknowledging the extraordinary display they had just witnessed. The wealthy man approached her afterward, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine respect. He spoke words of praise, acknowledging the skill, dedication, and emotion she had brought to the performance. Other patrons followed, expressing their admiration and gratitude. She accepted their compliments with humility, offering polite smiles and quiet thanks. She did not seek attention or recognition. The music had spoken for her, conveying everything she wished to express. The rest of the day was filled with a renewed sense of wonder. People lingered in the cafe, discussing the performance in hushed tones. New visitors came, hoping to experience the magic for themselves. She continued her work, serving coffee and pastries with her usual care. But there was a subtle glow in her demeanor, a quiet joy that reflected the deep satisfaction of sharing her gift. Throughout the day, she found small moments to return to the piano, pressing a few notes softly when the cafe was less busy. Each time she felt the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her fingers, a reminder of the connection between her past and present. The wealthy man remained nearby, observing with newfound admiration. The playful challenge had been replaced by a genuine appreciation for the talent and dedication she displayed. By evening, the cafe had quieted again, and she tidied up with care, arranging chairs and wiping counters. The piano sat silently in its corner, holding the echoes of the day's music. She placed a gentle hand on the top, as if thanking it for being her companion. Stepping outside, the streets were bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The air was warm, carrying the faint scents of pastries and evening flowers. She walked home slowly, reflecting on the extraordinary moments hidden within an ordinary day. Her life remained simple, yet it had been touched by something remarkable. The music had revealed her talent, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had listened. She felt gratitude, humility, and a quiet sense of triumph, knowing that her dedication, patience, and love for music had created a moment of shared wonder. It was a reminder that true talent, nurtured quietly and humbly, could shine through even the most ordinary of circumstances, touching hearts and inspiring those fortunate enough to witness it. The morning sun warmed the streets as she walked to the cafe, her steps calm and measured. Today felt different, though she could not explain why. The town seemed to hum with quiet excitement, as if everyone knew something remarkable had happened and was eager to see what would follow. As she entered the cafe, she was greeted by familiar faces, some smiling warmly, others whispering among themselves. News of her talent had begun to spread, and even regular patrons seemed to look at her with a newfound admiration. She went about her usual tasks, arranging tables, wiping counters, and preparing the coffee and pastries with care. The piano in the corner stood silently, waiting, and she felt a subtle pull toward it. It was more than an instrument. It was a part of her life, a companion that had carried her through countless hours of practice, joy, and reflection. Today, she knew, was not just about her performance. It was about how the music could touch the lives of others, creating moments of connection and inspiration. The cafe began to fill with people, some who had come specifically to witness her talent, others who had heard about it by word of mouth. There was a gentle buzz in the air, a sense of anticipation that made the ordinary space feel charged with energy. She moved through the crowd quietly, her presence unassuming yet commanding in a way that drew attention naturally. The wealthy man from the previous days had returned as well, his curiosity genuine now, his earlier teasing replaced by respect. When she approached the piano, people instinctively turned to watch. The keys, worn and imperfect, awaited her touch. She pressed a note gently, and it rang out with clarity and emotion. The audience leaned forward, drawn in by the sound. It was more than music. It was a message, a story told through melody, rhythm, and the subtle nuances that only someone deeply connected to their art could convey. She did not play for recognition or applause. She played because it was her way of communicating, a language of the heart that transcended words. As she played, the melody unfolded gracefully, each note building upon the last. She adapted seamlessly to the piano's imperfections, creating a sound that was rich, textured, and deeply moving. The audience was captivated. Children stopped their fidgeting, eyes wide with wonder. Regular patrons who had seen her every day without realizing the depth of her talent were amazed. Even new visitors, drawn by the growing reputation of her music, were spellbound by the beauty and emotion that filled the room. The wealthy man watched closely, clearly impressed by her skill and dedication. He had expected amusement, but he had received something far more profound. Her music spoke to something inside everyone present, touching emotions that words could not reach. It was a reminder of the power of passion, perseverance, and humility. The audience could sense the story behind each note, the quiet strength and dedication that had brought her to this moment. By mid-morning, the cafe was buzzing with energy. People discussed the performance in low tones, their voices filled with admiration and awe. Some had returned, eager to hear more, while others were newcomers curious to experience the music for themselves. She continued to play at intervals, sharing her gift with all who listened, never seeking attention but simply letting the music speak. The impact was immediate and profound. Patrons felt a connection, a shared understanding that something rare and beautiful had been revealed in their midst. Word of her talent began to spread beyond the cafe. A few local journalists came by, curious about the story of the humble woman who could make a broken piano sing. They asked for interviews, eager to share her journey with a wider audience. She spoke quietly, with honesty and humility, recounting her early lessons and the years spent practicing in solitude. Her story resonated with many, illustrating how dedication, patience, and love for one's craft could create extraordinary results, even from modest beginnings. The wealthy man, now a genuine admirer, approached her with ideas of support. He suggested opportunities, introductions to music teachers, and even invitations to perform at local events. She listened carefully, grateful for the recognition and the doors being opened, yet she remained grounded. Her focus was not on fame or wealth, but on sharing her music and inspiring others to pursue their passions, no matter their circumstances. The offers she received were opportunities, but she approached them thoughtfully, considering how they could align with her values and purpose. Throughout the day, people returned repeatedly to hear her play. The cafe transformed into a hub of curiosity, creativity, and admiration. Patrons connected over the music, strangers shared their experiences and stories, and the atmosphere was one of warmth and inspiration. She moved among them with grace, acknowledging their presence with gentle smiles and quiet conversation, never allowing herself to be overwhelmed by the growing attention. Even the children who had once ignored the piano became enthralled by its sound. They watched her hands with fascination, learning that dedication and passion could create something extraordinary. Parents observed with pride, seeing their children captivated by an example of skill, humility, and perseverance. The music had become a bridge between generations, a language that everyone could understand and appreciate. As the afternoon faded into evening, she continued her work, balancing her routine with moments at the piano. Each performance was unique, adapting to the mood of the room and the audience present. The broken instrument, once overlooked, had become a source of inspiration and wonder. Patrons left with smiles, stories to share, and a sense of having experienced something truly special. The cafe had become more than a place for coffee. It was now a stage for magic, connection, and the celebration of hidden talent. By the end of the day, she closed the cafe with a quiet satisfaction. The piano sat in the corner, holding the echoes of the day's music. She placed a gentle hand on the keys, a silent acknowledgement of the companion that had carried her through this extraordinary journey. Stepping outside, the town was bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The streets were peaceful, and the air carried the faint scent of flowers and evening bread. She walked home slowly, reflecting on the events of the day. Her life remained simple and humble, but it had been touched by something remarkable. The music she shared had created a profound impact, connecting people, inspiring admiration, and opening doors she had never imagined. She felt gratitude, not for the recognition or opportunities, but for the ability to express herself and touch the hearts of others. It was a reminder that dedication, humility, and passion could create ripples of influence far beyond what one could anticipate. As she settled into her apartment that evening, she thought about the future with quiet hope. There would be more performances, more opportunities to share her music, but she knew the core of her journey would remain the same: a humble heart, a love for her craft, and a desire to inspire through the simple, profound beauty of music. The day had been transformative, not just for those who witnessed her talent, but for her own understanding of the power of sharing one's gift with the world. She closed her eyes, a soft smile on her lips, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a life lived with purpose, dedication, and the courage to reveal one's hidden strengths. The next morning, she woke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through her small apartment window. There was a calmness in the air, yet she sensed a subtle shift in her life. The events of the past days had rippled quietly through the town, changing the way people viewed her, the cafe, and the music that flowed from the old piano. She prepared herself as usual, making a simple breakfast and taking a moment to breathe, feeling the anticipation that always comes with new beginnings. Walking to the cafe, she noticed the streets were busier than usual. Some faces were familiar, smiling as they recognized her. Others were new, drawn by curiosity and whispers of her performances. She felt a quiet warmth in the attention, not from ego, but from the realization that her music had become more than personal joy. It had become a source of inspiration for others. She opened the cafe doors, stepping inside to greet her patrons with the same gentle smile that had always been a part of her mornings. The piano in the corner seemed to call to her as it always had, but today the atmosphere felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that something significant was about to happen. People gathered quietly, some seated with coffee in hand, others standing near the door, all drawn to the space by the knowledge of what she could create. The wealthy man from previous days was present as well, watching with genuine admiration, a silent acknowledgement of the remarkable talent she had shared with the town. She approached the piano and ran her fingers lightly across the keys, feeling the familiar textures beneath her touch. Even the broken keys seemed to respond to her presence, their imperfections adding character to the sound she was about to produce. She pressed a single key and the note resonated clearly, holding a depth and warmth that immediately captured the room. The audience leaned in instinctively, the music acting as a bridge between her and everyone present, connecting hearts in a silent understanding. Her fingers began to move with natural grace, weaving a melody that was at once delicate and powerful. The music told a story of quiet perseverance, of hidden talent nurtured in solitude, and of the joy found in dedication to something meaningful. Each note carried emotion, and each pause allowed the listeners to absorb the depth of feeling behind her performance. Patrons were captivated, their attention fully drawn to the unfolding music. Children stopped their games, regulars held their breath, and newcomers watched in awe, experiencing the unexpected beauty that filled the cafe. The wealthy man observed intently, his earlier amusement replaced by respect and admiration. He had come expecting a spectacle, but he had discovered something far greater, a genuine expression of talent and heart. Around the room, people were moved in different ways. Some smiled softly, remembering moments in their own lives, while others felt tears prickling their eyes, touched by the sincerity and emotion conveyed through the melody. The music had a way of speaking directly to their souls, bypassing words entirely. She continued to play, letting the piano's imperfections guide her creativity rather than hinder it. Broken keys became part of the rhythm, muted notes added subtle textures, and the worn wood seemed to hum in harmony with her fingers. The audience sensed the uniqueness of the performance, understanding that this was not just skill, but an intimate dialogue between artist and instrument. Every note, every movement carried a story of quiet dedication, of years spent cultivating passion away from recognition or praise. As the morning turned to afternoon, more people arrived, drawn by the tales of her music and the quiet magic of the cafe. Conversation ceased as the melody filled the room, each note creating a connection among strangers. She played with a calm intensity, aware of the audience but not controlled by their presence. Her focus was entirely on the music, on expressing the feelings that had long resided in her heart. The cafe had transformed from a simple coffee shop into a sanctuary of sound and emotion. News of her talent continued to spread, reaching people outside the town. Journalists, local musicians, and curious visitors came to hear the woman who could make a broken piano sing. She welcomed them with humility, sharing her story and music without fanfare, emphasizing that it was not about recognition, but about the joy and meaning that music brought to life. Her approach inspired many, showing that greatness could exist quietly and that true passion required neither attention nor approval to flourish. Throughout the day, she played multiple pieces, each one unique, reflecting different emotions and experiences. Patrons returned, eager to witness the magic again, and each performance left an indelible mark on their hearts. Children learned the value of dedication and the beauty of expressing oneself, while adults were reminded of the power of quiet perseverance. The wealthy man offered support and encouragement, but she accepted it only in ways that aligned with her values, focusing on how her music could continue to touch lives rather than seeking personal gain. Evening arrived, and the cafe slowly emptied. She tidied up, arranging chairs and wiping counters, yet her attention remained drawn to the piano. It had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a vessel of expression and a testament to her journey. She pressed a few final notes softly, savoring the lingering sounds, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The day had been extraordinary not because of fame or recognition, but because she had shared something deeply personal and meaningful, and it had resonated with others. Walking home, she reflected on how much had changed in a short period. Her life was still simple, grounded in routines and modest pleasures, yet it had been enriched by the connections her music had created. The town had discovered a hidden treasure in her talent, and she had gained confidence in her ability to share her gift. The experiences of the past days had shown her that the beauty of music lay not in perfection, but in honesty, emotion, and the courage to express oneself fully. As night fell, she settled into her apartment, the soft glow of a lamp illuminating her small, familiar surroundings. She thought about the people she had touched, the smiles, the quiet tears, and the shared moments of awe. Each interaction reminded her of the power of patience, humility, and dedication. Music had not only revealed her talent, but had also strengthened her sense of purpose and her connection to the community. She realized that her journey was not just about her own growth, but about the impact she could have on others. By embracing her passion and allowing it to flourish despite the limitations of her circumstances, she had inspired those around her. People had learned that beauty and talent could emerge in the most unexpected places, that perseverance and love for one's craft could create ripples of change far beyond oneself. In the days that followed, the cafe continued to flourish, not merely as a place for coffee, but as a space of inspiration and creativity. Patrons returned regularly, eager to hear her music and to feel the unique energy that it brought. She continued to play, each performance a testament to her journey and a gift to the community. Her life remained humble, grounded in the routines she cherished, yet filled with new meaning and purpose. She never sought fame or wealth. Her joy came from the quiet moments at the piano, the expressions of wonder and appreciation from those who listened, and the understanding that her music had the power to connect people, to lift spirits, and to inspire hope. The broken piano, once overlooked, had become a symbol of resilience, creativity, and the transformative power of dedication. One evening, as she closed the cafe and walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her life had been simple, but it had been touched by extraordinary experiences. Through music, she had found a way to connect with others, to share her story, and to leave a lasting impression on her community. She knew that her journey would continue, that each day would bring new opportunities to inspire and touch hearts. But she also knew that the essence of her life, humility, dedication, and love for her craft, would remain unchanged. As she settled into her small apartment, the world outside quiet and serene, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The music had done more than reveal her talent. It had transformed her life and the lives of those around her. It had shown that true greatness is not always loud or celebrated, but often quiet, persistent, and deeply human. And in that quiet, she had discovered the extraordinary power of passion, perseverance, and the courage to share one's gift with the world.